order of the day number 1.
Appropriation 2013-14 Estimates Bill, Committee Stage.
I declare the House in committee.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa. Honourable members, the House is in committee on the Appropriation 2013-2014 Estimates Bill, and the Standing Orders provides for 8 hours of debate on these estimates. Each member may have no more than 2 speeches of 5 minutes on each vote. The estimates debate should be relevant to the government's current spending plans as contained in the estimates of appropriations. All votes are available for debate and will be called in order of seniority of ministers, commencing with the Speaker's votes. A compendium of the reports of select committees on the votes is available on the table. The question is that vote audits stand part of the schedules. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. The contrary, no. The ayes have it. The question is that the vote office of the clerk stand part of the schedules. Those of that opinion, please say aye. Aye. The contrary, no. The ayes have it. The question now is then that the vote ombudsman stand part of the schedules. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The question now is that the Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment vote stand part of the schedules. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The question now is that vote Parliamentary Service stand. I call the Honourable Member Grant Robertson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. The Parliamentary Service plays a critical role in establishing the environment in which we work and which members of the public and members of the media work in with the parliamentary process. And we have today heard of a most serious incident. That is the release of information about a journalist's activities in this Parliament, in particular the question of phone logs. The role of the media in relationship to Parliament and parliamentary services is an important part of our democracy. No matter what we all might think time to time from how the media portray parliamentarians, there is no doubt that their role in this House and in these precincts is vital to New Zealanders' understanding of what happens in our democracy. And today we learn that phone records, 3 months' worth of phone records of a journalist, have been handed over to the David Henry inquiry. That is one of the most serious and disgraceful actions that could take place in this House, Mr. Chair, because the media need to know, acting as they do on behalf of the citizens of New Zealand, that their communications are sacrosanct, and that has been breached, Mr. Chair, and that is an incredibly serious matter for this side of the House. We condemn the release of that material. We condemn the fact that it has come out because we believe that the media's role is essential. But the question has to be asked, Mr. Chair, how did that material come to be released? Because it appears that David Henry, the person leading the inquiry, didn't want it. He didn't want the information and he sent it back. So who requested parliamentary services that that material be released? And if we look through the history of this matter, Mr. Chair, of the Henry report, there are 2 people who are at the centre of this. John Key as Prime Minister, who called for the inquiry, and his Chief of Staff, Wayne Eagleson. They are the 2 people who have been at the centre of this inquiry. Now, at the outset of the inquiry, Mr. Chair, John Key didn't want to know about it. He said it was Andrew Kibblewhite, the Chief Executive of DPMC, and Ian Fletcher, the Director of GCSB. It was their inquiry. He didn't want to know about it. He went as far as saying he was as in the dark as anybody else about this inquiry. Well, Mr. Chair, that is clearly not true. And what appears to be the case from written questions and from oral questions in this House, what appears to be the case is that the Prime Minister, through his Chief of Staff, has put pressure on Parliamentary Services to release material about the activities of parliamentarians and about the activities of the media. That is what it appears, because Wayne Eagleson was as far back as the beginning of May in contact with Parliamentary Services about email metadata release. Now, we have contradictory answers about this within the written questions that have been given out, but what we can clearly establish is that the Parliamentary Service spoke with Wayne Eagleson during the afternoon of the 9th of May about whether or not there was cooperation from ministers or from parliamentarians, including Peter Dunn, about releasing phone records. The question is, was that simply a conversation about agreeing, or was that a conversation where the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff asked for that material? And if we look at answers to written question 8179, this is what the Prime Minister said. My office directly asked Parliamentary Services to provide the material. That's what the Prime Minister said in written questions, which means that the Prime Minister and his office are up to their necks in the release of this information, which would have been considered private, certainly by the journalist, and possibly also by Mr Dunn, who I now read says that this information that has come out today about what Parliamentary Services did is in contradiction to what he was told at the end of May. So we have a situation here, Mr Chair, where Parliamentary Services, the organisation that the Speaker leads on behalf of all of us, that is separate from the executive, that is deliberately separated out from the executive to ensure that we are fairly treated as parliamentarians right across the House, that organisation appears to have come under pressure from the executive branch. And Mr Chair, that is completely unacceptable. In this democracy, we should know that Parliamentary Services, acting as it does on behalf of all parliamentarians, can act on our behalf, not on the executive behalf. John Key is donkey deep in this.
I call the honourable member Russell Norman.